Okay, we want to get the second session started. I hope you had an invigorating morning session. You've gotten something to eat. Some people might be struggling for coffee. We'll have a break soon. But we do want to get into the second part, which is the future of work, which is definitely an important topic for us here on the continent, given that over 70% of our population is below the age of 21. I think Uganda has the youngest age percentage. I think they're 15 years old. It's the majority of their age. So all of us in this room are not the future. I'm sorry, apart from the even, not you. You can be impacting them, but nah, you're past that bracket. And so I think it's a critical conversation to have. We've had many things. Potential is the word that's used to describe the continent. And maybe it's time to be the people who actually realize it and not just be the potential. And here to lead this conversation is another fierce female. I think it's being in Rwanda. I think it's being in Kigali. And that's why there's so many women running this show. I think there's just, the environment has made it conducive. It doesn't seem like a strange thing that it's just women after women after women on stage. So here to lead this is Maria Sarungi Tsai. She's EF Fellow and Director of Compass Communications in Tanzania. She's a force to reckon with. And I think part of the things, in addition to the numerous things she's done, but being the founder of #ChangeTanzania, which is a nonpartisan social movement based on bringing people and sustainable change to Tanzania, is probably the thing that has allowed her to cross borders. And I think it just links what technology is, where young people are, and how they feel that they can address their voice. So I think there's no one better to run this conversation. Please give a big round of applause for Maria. She comes on stage and she'll introduce her panel.
Asante sana, Lona. This is great. By the way, I love your shoes. I think I'm just going to take it off you. So I'm going to start by saying that I was telling Lorna, and it's a bit joking, but I'm actually not necessarily joking. I said, I'm going to introduce my dream team. Yes, I have got a dream team, you know, because the next panel is, I think, the most diverse group of people, but I think that they're the best suited to talk about the future of work, and we'll soon understand why. And I'm going to start by calling on stage, and you know, we really have been working so hard to get gender balance. So out of the 5, we have at least 2 men. So let me help them up. So let's give them priority. Gentlemen first. So we're gonna start with Mr. Harsha Purasinga, EF Fellow from 2014, and he's from Sri Lanka. He's the CEO of Micromanage Holdings, but that doesn't say half of what he does. You can read his profile. So one of the things we're not going to waste time is just read up what's here. So I hope everybody has a booklet. But you get to know more of him as we continue to speak. And then the next gentleman, giving them priority, of course, is Mr. Wellington Chibebe. Welcome. He is the regional head of the International Labour Organization, ILO, for East Africa. In general, I say, but I think it goes all the way to Somalia, if I'm not mistaken, right? Minus Somalia, but it goes to a number of countries. And then now we're going to welcome our fierce warrior women up here. And I'm going to start with Dr. Diane Karusisi, CEO of Bank of Kigali. Welcome. And then we're going to have Nomfanelo Magwenchu, EF Fellow from 2013, but also she's principal at McKinsey & Company from South Africa. And last but not least, we have got Dr. Alexandra Henrion Code from Mauritius, originally from France, but she's from Mauritius, and she's an EF Fellow as well from 2013. So 2013, meeting up here on stage. Thank you so much. And the first thing that I always say is when you hear about the future of work, people just sort of start saying, future of work, technology, robotic, oh my God, we're not gonna have a job, all of us. But you know, Is that true, Harsha? Is that the future of work? That we all, soon there's just gonna be here a robot looking like Maria, but not really Maria? Is that the future?
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, I will give a broader answer. Let me first give a very technology perspective to how we, from the technology sector, see this whole notion of work changing. So the first thing I have to tell everybody is we are entering the era of augmented work. The virtual workforce have started to arrive. You can't deny that. I'm taking from not from African perspective, this is from a global perspective. 47%, I just found out from my McKinsey colleague that it's 50% of the work that is executed today can be automated within next 3 to 4 years. Now, first of all, let me tell you what are the drivers of this change. Unlike the previous industrial revolution, the rate of change of the fourth industrial revolution being in technology, I find it scary. I myself find it very scary. The combined effect of the digital technology, AI, cognitive, machine learning, robotics, are going to make a tremendous impact to most of the repetitive work, task-oriented jobs. And that's, whether we like it or not, going to get automated. And it's going to happen in manufacturing as well. There's lots of robotics coming into manufacturing as well. And then there's industrial drones taking over as well. So we are coming into an era where we have to start thinking, what's going to be the work of the future? How do we envision work? Because all of a sudden now we see machines helping the human beings. In fact, how I see is we are bringing more humanity to work now, because we have to start what we are really good at. Problem solving, thinking, strategic thinking, communication, empathy, those things into play, where the rest will be taken over by machines. And on the other side, I wanted to give another perspective, that the workforce dynamics are changing. Again, predominantly driven by technology disruption. The traditional workforce that we all used to see, where you have permanent employees, you have some casual labor contract workers, then we had this outsourced managed service era, but now we are seeing talent platforms emerging. There are so many highly skilled people don't want to work these traditional 8 to 5 jobs. They want to freelance and be part of this talent gig economies, crowdsource economies, and be part of these talent platforms. And so we see a new organization emerging. For the first time, we will see, after 2020, all generations plus machines working together. This is the kind of future I'm seeing. The millennials, the Gen Z, the Gen X, the boomers, and the machines, all going to work together. How about that? And
sounds good.
Finally, to wrap up, the physical place that we used to call the workplace is disrupted again because of technology. That actually opens up lots of opportunity to so many people. You don't necessarily need to go to a particular place to execute some of the work anymore. Because the rate of change, again, with the communication technology, we see the commercial rollout of 5G very soon. Most of the countries, including places like here, we already have 4G broadband. That allows people to work from anywhere. And the mobile technology is so sophisticated. Collaboration technologies have reached another era. If you tell me, I used to have an office in my building, CEO's office. I gave up 4 years ago because I realized I hardly doesn't need to come to that place to work anymore. I gave it to an engineering team to occupy, transform into a meeting room now. Because the kind of work I do, I can do it from anywhere. Because we use a lot of collaboration technology. So the future I see is a very interesting future, driven by these fourth industrial revolution disruptors, I would say. And I want to scare off everybody. I mean, people will disagree with me, but unlike the previous revolutions I've seen, when technology, this era of technology starts scaling, is exponential. The rate of change is exponential. So I will stop at this point.
Okay.
And I'll add more.
Sure, because I think that there'll be a lot of counter views about that. But I'm going to come to you, Nomfanelo, and I'm more interested in the study that McKinsey has done, but also on your views. If you look at the study, you know, what we are hearing may not be the reality in Africa. Is Africa going to be catching up in the digital divide, or the 4G that we're talking about is not a reality for most Africans?
Thank you, Maria. I think, I mean, I told you you're going to scare us, including myself. We've done a lot of studies at McKinsey with the McKinsey Global Institute, including the 27 study that was talking about jobs lost, jobs gained, and workforce transitions. Because our understanding is that automation is reality, and that reality means about 6 out of 10 occupations currently, based on current technologies, 6 out of 10 occupations, up to 50% of the type of work that you do could be automated based on current technologies. So if you're talking about exponential changes and technologies coming on board, then that could escalate. But this is based on the midpoint, which in other countries is up to 26% of automation of occupations. In the African countries, for example, on the developing countries, for example, South Africa, that is around 17% instead of 50%. So this 50% is countries like Japan and Germany, where there's a lot of manufacturing, and also they have a lot of technology already. So what is driving the speed and how this automation will take off is based on currently the economic structure. For example, in South Africa, we have a service industry. Also, the people that have the wage structures. If you have to make a trade-off between investing in technology and hiring people, also in the midst of high unemployment, then maybe how quickly you're going to get to automation may be slower than developed country economies. Secondly, once I say that this may be slower in the developing countries, some of the sectors and industries don't have an option. If you think about banking, financial services, if you think about manufacturing, if you think about retail, the requirement from customers are demanding a better experience. So some of the banks that are currently being launched are digital banks from scratch, no human interface, but digital. So that is important to also note that it's not going to be the same for all industries, but specific in financial services and manufacturing and retail specifically to improve margins, because these sectors are under pressure. So it's important then to adopt automation to improve your performance. Some of the sectors that are export industries, for example, in South Africa, if you think about mining, for the mining companies to stay competitive for exporting their commodities in the global market, they have to improve their competitiveness. And adopting technologies and digital transformations in those organizations is important. So there is a benefit in automation in terms of improving your productivity, improving your customer experience, reducing costs, and also being globally competitive. So that's what is important that we need to think about. And therefore, my view is that we should not be scared. We should be very comfortable that this is an opportunity for us to improve growth in our economies. And our data shows that between 0.8 and 1.4% globally could be added value in the global economy if we adopt automation.
Yes, thank you. I just want quickly to go, and I'm going to come back because I have a lot of questions still for each one of you, because I feel like we're not finishing up, but I wanted, because you talked about the finance sector, to move to Diane. And Diane, you know, we've seen the basic automation happening already in the banking, right? So when the typewriter came already, the banking was the first place where a lot of people lost their jobs, and then the computers came, which were like a cupboard, and gets worse and worse. As you know, the technology looks like smaller items are coming in, but more humans are losing their jobs. How is the finance sector, particularly in Africa, ready for this kind of future? Which we are told, by the way, by the experts, it's unavoidable. So I'm very interested to hear your opinion as well.
Thank you. Thank you, first of all, for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be sharing some insights on this panel. So first of all, when I think future of work, not only do I not get scared, I actually get excited. Because when I think of the future of work, I see more meaningful work, more fulfilling work, and better life-work balance, which is one of my biggest pain points today. So I look at the future with excitement because I think many of my pain points today are going to be solved, maybe not for me, but for my children, etc. For the banking sector, I think the future is already happening. We see a lot of automation. We see customers, wanting a better experience. We see customers serving themselves, so they don't need to go to the branch to get a service. They want the service on their fingertips. And this has sort of displaced jobs. No longer at the branch, but we have more and more people at the head office looking after customer experience. We have armies of people designing these digital products because we want the customer to feel excited when he's transacting. So that's why I don't really feel that there's a problem with us in the banking sector. We are adjusting. We need to adjust because we want our clients also adjusting.
But also you need to meet the bottom line, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's also addressing some of the most pressing challenges in financial services on the continent. Because from the day people have mobile phones, we have more people financially included now. I mean, the examples are many. M-Pesa in Kenya and all over East Africa, everyone is transacting on the phone. And only 10 years ago, we had maybe 10% of the population financially included. Now we have almost everyone financially included. So I see technology as solving solutions, and I see excitement when I think of the future.
Thank you very much. And now I'm going to challenge Mr. Chibebe here. You've come from a background of the International Trade Union, and you're the Deputy Secretary General, now you're at the ILO. As a person who basically cut his teeth in labor and caring for the people in the workforce, when you hear about the future of work, what do you think of in terms of the people who are doing the work?
Well, like my sisters have just said, we are very positive about whatever is happening. For starters, as a representative of the ILO, it is also common knowledge that ILO was formed 100 years ago. We are celebrating 100 years this year. And one of the first conventions that ILO came up with was the hours of work. And we proudly say ILO gave you the weekend, the 40-hour week. So it was futuristic. I think the challenge we do is that we look into the future, not necessarily considering that we are coming from a past. Because there were people who were actually planning for what we are doing today. And they were not scared. And the present will determine the future. Take, for example, myself. You talk about my background. I started work as an apprentice fitter, qualified as a diesel plant fitter, responsible for repair of steam locomotives at first, then diesel locomotives later, then later on electric locomotives. Highly technical.
Yeah.
Now, what is important is that when you hear about the future, they say that a journey of 1,000 years starts from under our feet.
Yes.
We are starting the future of work today. And therefore, what we need is just to prepare. Mind-wise, psychologically, prepare ourselves and the communities that we live in to be ready for the future. There are other countries who have been already where we are today, right? And they were not scared to be where they were, and they are not scared to go where they would want to go, because that's reality. The challenge we have in terms of the future versus work situation is that we become rigid and think of instruments minus the human beings. No future will actually be sustained without the human factor. That's the fact. So therefore, even if we are to come with robots, those robots will be made by human beings. That's point number one. And those robots will be operated by human beings. And therefore, what we need to do is to prepare ourselves in terms of skills in preparation for the future of work.
We'll get to that, because I think that is a whole different discussion that I would really love to see this panel discuss. But I'm going to come to you, Dr. Alexandra. And I think that primarily as a scientist, you always look at things from a different perspective. You have the ability to sort of take a reflection and look at all this that we're doing, the nitty-gritty, and structure it. How do you see the future of work with the human factor in it? In the sense that we are seeing right now a lot of different factors in Africa, which makes it very different. And we've talked a little bit about economies being developed and not, but I think that there's more to that. How do you see the future of work in that context?
So, as a scientist, I've learned a very good lesson, which is that any time that colleagues of mine have predicted something, typically in genetics, about sequencing, are we going ever to be able to sequence the whole genome? The answer was no way, of course not. And then when the first genome was eventually sequenced, then it was one genome that would sequence, but that would be the end of it, because it's just so costly that you just forget about it. And then we know the next step, which was for $1,000, you now get your genome sequenced. So whatever prediction, and I really cannot see in the history of science, whenever we had a prediction, it was completely different, the outcome. So this is about human being. This is about the fact that human being always brings surprises. If you want to go into the future of something, the only source of reliable data I can get is from art. Mm-hmm. And you would go for George Orwell, you would go for Aldous Huxley, you would go for we were talking of healthcare, we would go for Picasso. Picasso drawings was just the anticipation of what health has evolved into. Because we are no longer treated as a human being, we are completely exposed. Like one breast here, one eye here, and that's the way a doctor treats you. So that was a long history, a long introduction to say that future of work, I would be, and philosophers have it wrong. I remember my father making me read when I was a kid, the civilization of leisure through informatics. The digital world is going to pave the civilization of leisure. There we are, talking of the future of work, not leisure. So to me, the idea is go back to the roots, what we are talking about, work. Okay. So then, if I can have the
can we have the slide number 2, number 1?
Because to me, we have to sort of framework our discussion, and when we think about work, we think of two things. We think of the nature of work, and we think of the workforce. Mm-hmm. So if you...
We're still waiting for the slides, but,
I
trust that they're looking for it. Okay.
But like, why do we work? Why is it that we are talking of work? Is it because just of the value money, or is it for something else? At the very first, we started working because we needed to feed our kids.
Our families.
Okay,
yeah.
or to feed ourselves. So the first work is a participation in the creation. So actually, this is great. This is it's not the slide I wanted, but that's quite all right. It's a McKinsey slide, huh? No.
You can go back to the other one. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, because I really like it, because this is really the talent of this conference, isn't it? We have the USA, the China, India, Europe, all fitting in Africa, and yet there is still more landscape to fit in, to fill. So who can answer the future of work when you see that, when you see its diversity, and when you see this immense challenge? So this is really good because it brings to some figures, and indeed the figure to me is the composition of the people who are going to work. May I have the second slide? So if we framework, no? The guy is really sleeping.
No, he's going to get it.
Okay.
Yeah, just go on.
All right. If we go, but I would like to get the organization of work,
Yeah.
where you see that it answers to a number of regulatory aspects. So one is obviously law. Law is putting some constraint on work. Mm-hmm. You have demographic issue.
Can we get the next slide? Yeah. There we go.
Okay,
see?
thank you. So yeah, so you see the little box center at the top, organizational restructuring of work. You have laws, you have demographics, you have obviously the markets, and you have technology. Indeed, demographic, markets, and technology are the key aspect that will impose any thought that we have on work. But in Africa, what is it? Is it really the fact of the digital, the automation, the whatever issue that is going to change the future of work? Oh, no, not yet this one. It is the demographic. 30 million young Africans are likely to be entering the African labor market each year. 20% Africa is about 20% of the global youth population. It is expected by 2030, the number of African youth will have increased by 42%. So that makes a huge challenge. And now the huge challenge is youth is accounting, and this is the drama, for 60% of all unemployed in Africa. And only 1 in 4 will find a wage job. This is, to me, a real preoccupation.
Yes, thank you very much. And now I'm going to open this up because I would like to see a bit more dynamic. I know that because of the different viewpoints, as I said, you can feel free to bring in a different perspective. But I'm going to go back to you, Harsha, because you did talk about, the technological aspect, but let's a little bit take it away from the Silicon Valley sort of, lingo and perspectives. Let's talk about realities. And we've heard some of the panelists talk about that. And you're coming from a country in Sri Lanka where you have similar conditions. Yes, there's certain things that may be different, and I would like you to talk about that. But what about the skills? What about the skills transfer? Are we going to be able in Africa to catch up?
Yeah, so actually I like to pose the question. You need to define what is work. That element is very important. Because, as I mentioned in the start, in certain sectors, it doesn't matter whether you are in Africa or Asia or developed world, when these disruptions happen, it happens. So I want to pose the question to you as well. When banks start using robotic process automation and automate the banking processes, and digitize the whole process, what is going to happen to the workforce? So and also from call centers point of view, when the customer experiences are delivered through bots, what's going to happen to that workforce, which are large workforce, especially in countries like Philippines? So when I mention that word scarce, I mention it more from what are we going to do to prepare for the future? I want to bring that point he mentioned. How we are going to prepare for that future? These people have to get into different set of skills.
But I'm going to argue because, yeah, go on.
You have to
Yeah, so, sorry.
I like that because, what you're asking is how are we going to transition this workforce from what people are doing now to the next job.
Exactly.
Because the most important thing is that there will be disruptions.
That's one. And also
if
she
you're
mentioned...
not managed properly, then there will be jobs lost. So we need to manage the transitions properly. And what worries me is sometimes countries and corporations jump into the bandwagon of transitioning to technology without understanding exactly what value am I getting from adopting technology. So it's important to understand first what is the value that I'm getting from technology. We understand that organizations that adopt technology to innovate or to improve the customer experience then perform 1.5 times better than those that don't do that. What is important, though, is to make sure that you do this properly, structurally. You have the right strategy and the right people strategy. What skills do we have? What skills do we require? How are we going to transition the current workforce into the workforce of the future that we need? And people start talking about, oh, we're going to hire and hire and hire more people, but it's better to invest in the current workforce and upskill that current workforce before getting new people from outside.
But is that profitable? That's my question, yes.
Yeah, I have a
Even
question.
better, it's more profitable.
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Yes.
I know, Mr. Chibebe, you're going to come in, yes.
Why do you say that we have a need to go into that era? Why does Africa has the need of going into this digital world and automation?
Because Africa operates in a global markets. So we have to stay competitive. We can't just sit and say, in Africa, we cannot do this.
Or we're
If you are a
waiting.
bank, or we're going to wait. If you are a bank, if you are a mine that is exporting coal to other markets, you need to be competitive.
So the 60% of kids who are basically in their farms, what are you going to do? To extract them from their farms?
You need to prepare them for the future. But one of the important things is not think about the skills of the future on what they have now, is to make sure that we have their basics in place.
So
one of our biggest
I
challenges
need to
is
bring
that-
in, I'm just going to come back to
Yeah.
you, but I need to bring in here Mr. Chibebe, because that's a question that comes that, you know, we keep talking about the future of work as if it's going to, we have the luxury to wait or it's going to happen in some time, you know, down the line.
Yeah.
The truth is, these are the hard questions that we don't seem to have an answer. The 60% youth who are in rural areas are going to be middle-aged 60% or even more, and they're going to be out of jobs. And what is going to happen to that generation? Are we talking about a lost generation here? What does the ILO have as an answer when we talk about decent workplaces?
Well, I would want to start from what Mandela said, and I quote, if you want to eradicate poverty, educate the children of the poor.
True.
End of quote. In my sense, it's just not to educate the children of the poor, but to educate them to make the right choices and to have the enabling environment for them to be able to choose. Now, we are talking of figures, 60%. What about figures? The challenge we have at the moment is that we concentrate so much on the computer to produce figures, then we don't know what to do with the figures. As ILO, we've got a two-pronged approach because we have realized that our education system is focused toward the white collar, the sophisticated product. But we have a program, a simple program that we call Start and Improve Your Business. After going through the processes of schooling, we need to teach our people the elements of entrepreneurship. The challenge we have is that globally, maybe in Africa particularly, we train or we produce people who are ready to be employed. That's point number one. That's the worst mistake we do. Instead of having a two-pronged approach, employees come employers. I gave myself as an example. Assuming today I lose my job at the ILO, I put my overalls, I have my toolbox, and I go into a garage and I start fixing cars. That's an example. So if we don't come up with these programs that are targeting people to be employers in their own rights and to have entrepreneurial skills, because not everyone is born a business person. Even if you go through university, you also need practical skills. And as ILO, that's where we are going. Not only that, we are into the informal economy. Now, transiting from informal economy to formal economy. We have programs for that area. And with governments, with employers, and with workers, we are working as a tripartite to ensure that people graduate from informality to formality. Because even if you start as a grade 1 pupil, you have to go to grade 2.
Diane, you wanted to say something, and I'm particularly interested in the skills And a good example is that, when you say you're going to work in a bank, that's a white collar. But then you have to learn how to handle now all the new technologies coming in. It means you have to acquire skills, which, maybe is a bit manual-ish or a little bit, not that glorious, per se.
Yeah, I'll come back to the question he was asking and asking me, when we come to automate all back-end processes, what are we going to do with these people? I think this is a question that has been asked over and over again when the economy was transitioning from one state to another. When all the West was transitioning to a service economy, all the jobs were being exported to Asia. And at the time, I think some people were saying, the prophet of doom were saying, people are going to be jobless in the West, etc. But new jobs were being created. And even in the banking sector now, we are no longer maybe opening branches. That's a fact. Nobody's opening a branch anymore. But we are adding an agent maybe every 30 minutes. And in the past 2 years, we've opened 2,000 agents. And these are new jobs. They didn't exist. Agency banking was something, nobody knew about agency banking only a few years ago. So I think the digital economy and the new economy and the future is coming with new jobs requirements, with new positions that we don't know of today. And maybe I'll come back to my colleague from ILO. Formality, is not an end in itself. If it's an informal job and people can make a living out of it and people can, be fulfilled as human beings, I don't see a problem with that.
I want to also...
I have a response to that, a quick response to that. The reason why we push for formality is not to say that we want to make these people executives, but to ensure that they have protection, particularly social protection. Because if people are working in the informal economy sector, they have no protection, and they cannot afford to fall sick.
But we have to create new ways of protecting people in the informal economy, as opposed to molding everyone in. We have to create savings schemes, etc.
Right. Of course, from where you stand, you think there's no need for formalization. But we feel there is need, because if you look at government's priorities in terms of foreign direct investments, nothing will come to the informal economy, but to the formal economy.
Sector.
Some countries, they are now pushing for taxing the informal sector, yet the governments are not investing there. This is our worry. So it's not that we are trying to come up with the astronomically super solutions. But if you don't take your people along with you and you forget them, like the Financing for Development conference in Addis, they were saying leaving no one behind. But
Mr.
now,
Chibebe, ask your question, and then we have to have just been warned that we're completely out of time. We need to take some from the audience, but save your opinion, because the closing, I'm going to be challenging each one of you. Okay. You had a question you wanted to ask before you finished? No?
Leaving no one behind.
Leaving no one behind. Okay.
Are we
can I
taking
get the ushers?
everyone along?
Great. So, we have, no, please. I'm trying to help here with gender balance. So, the minority doesn't feel that I've ignored them. So may I see a show of hand? And, usually I think these are the people who always don't get a chance. So I would start here with the majority party. There you go. Yes, can we get a mic back here?
Hi.
Introduction. I think it's better to get one that works. Here, there's one another one. Yeah. Just tap it. Tap it.
But my name is...
No, it's okay.
Okay, so my name is Eme Dushime. I'm a tax consultant, and I really get excited when I hear our conversations about future of work, because I know it also affects me. Yeah? But I do agree with what the panelists have said about technology, but there's something I often feel like it's a little bit ignored in terms of the generation gap. For instance, what will we do if, because the new generation is all about the millennials. We have all heard about Simon Sinek with his opinion about the millennials, right? So Maria, you said at the introduction that we talk about the future of work as if it's something that's going to happen in 50 years' time. But then I believe right now we are living the future of work that we used to talk about a couple of years ago, right? But then with this gap that we have between the millennials and other generations, what are we doing to ensure that things will still be smooth, as we transition from different technologies, And then another thing.
No. I'm sorry. We will take only one question because I want to give more opportunity. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yes. No. Sorry, because we're on a panel. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to open it up for people who've never had the mic before. There you go. I'm sorry. I'm just really trying to be inclusive, the African way.
All right. Thank you very much. My name is Olubomi Odekunle from Nigeria. I'm a social and tech entrepreneur. I really love this topic of the future of work, and I get excited when I see industry leaders trying to tell you about the future of work. My submission about the future of work is this. Number one, it's not going to take any job away. I'm telling you the facts. It's rather going to create more employment. But the problem is this. When it's creating employment, are we ready for those employments? Yes. Take, for instance, there's a wide gap between the future of work and the present African curriculum, the educational curriculum. How will I go to India and China to bring in developers, programmers, to create solutions that is centric to Africa? You understand? And if you look at the financial services, they experience this problem the most. When they bring in solution, probably you want to implement an ERP solution for a bank in Africa. More often than not, those solutions are actually Western-centric. So when they come to Africa, 80% of ERP applications, they fail because they don't understand the African system. And the fact that I run an accounting firm, you run an accounting firm, our business processes are different. But when you travel out, you understand that their business processes are almost the same. So what I'm saying in essence is, what are we doing to bridge the gap between the future of work and our present educational curriculum?
Thank you very much. Great question. I see a lot of people nodding. I'm going to take from that side. Yes, please. Can I get a mic there? Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Interesting discussion. My name is Moses Ngangwanetia. I'm a Ghanaian, an Eisenhower Fellow. Many of you here know me as Moses the farmer from Ghana. Good. So, my question goes to the gentleman from the ILO. You've done a good job. Congratulations. You face the realities on the ground. That's true. But this is the fact, that as we're talking of future of work, we are increasingly losing our agricultural land. We're losing agricultural land. We are losing it rapidly. And if we are not careful, we will, at a point in time, not even be able to get the energy from the food that we just ate to be able to get to the bank to work and to develop those robots to be able to do any other thing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The question that I would like the ILO gentleman to answer is as to what the ILO is doing as far as the increasing level of land grabbing is concerned that the IFAD and FAO has over the years talked of.
Thank you very much, Moses. That's a great question. Yes, can I get a mic there? Yes.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robin Bourne-Taylor. I live in Ghana and run a youth development organisation. I just wanted to raise a general point, which is in looking at some of the concerns about the future of work, just questioning if we're really giving full credit to the future potential of education. When I was on my global fellowship in 2018 in the US, I almost chanced upon a meeting with the head of R&D at the IBM Watson laboratory. And he really opened my eyes to the huge potentials in education that could really be a leap forward for Africa. And I just wondered if what you thought of it, and if you thought maybe look at the same technologies causing some threats and actually say it could be the same thing that gives Africa its competitive advantage.
Okay, thank you very much. I've taken from four corners of the world that we represent here. So I'm going to quickly ask, because I'm seeing Siobhan is going like, oh no, there she goes. So what I'm going to do is, Quick responses, pick the question that you feel, that you really you want to talk about. And then we're going to come with the last question, and you better be prepared to give it a very short answer. But it has to be very insightful. So I'm going to start with you, Harsha.
Yeah, I think
there is a generational gap. There is about agriculture, curriculum, education, future of education. What is the one that really struck you from
I
this
think the
question?
education.
Education.
It's the most important thing, because I'm a strong believer in what I said. It's going to happen, whether it's Africa or wherever. It's all this automation, all disruption. You can't run away from it. And the rate of change is exponential. So the key is how we are going to educate the younger generation for the future that we are going to envision. When this automation happen and these jobs are changed, certain people have to be educated towards, this whole education system of testing your memory has to be changed to more creativity, imagination, soft skills, collaboration, teamwork, empathy. That kind of skills has to come into play. And also I quite agree with some of the points he said. There are certain jobs that machines can't do. Taking care of elderly people. I don't believe in a robot going and serving medicine and taking care of aging population. No. So there's a lot of opportunity that space. Hospitality industry, there's lots of opportunity creating. So you need to prepare the younger generation for the jobs of the future. But it's very important they are taught digital skills. It's very, very important for them to understand. And what I've understood generally is the development sector is very slow to understand the the technology disruption. So that's why they have a different view on this whole thing. Because they don't understand the technologies, how it's impacting. And it will take, it's a big problem the whole developing world is going to face. So education is key.
Thank you. Nomfanelo, there's a host of questions. There's a question about generational gap. I don't know if you've seen that in your work, in your research, but I would like to also a little bit talk about, because I'm hearing all the thing about education. And when we look at education, we look at employment, there's something that it seems we keep skipping, the gender gap. What are the facts saying about that?
So I think if we continue to neglect the gender diversity and focus on women, the impact of the future of work and technology and transitions will have a bigger impact. Because then women, we know in Africa, they don't have the same access to technology as men. At the same time, the skills that are required for the future of work are not necessarily the manual skills, are more predictive, non-predictive skills, cognitive skills, supervisory skills, and women naturally have those capabilities. There are new jobs that will come into the stream, like chief of sustainability, and most of those jobs currently are occupied by women. So we'd really need to prepare our women and make sure that we help them to balance, to create a balance between the paid work and unpaid work. Currently, most women focus on the unpaid work. So if we monetize the unpaid work and create jobs in that space and give women the opportunity to focus on the paid work, give them the tools, help them with technology training, and also with e-commerce. Most of e-commerce platforms and businesses are run by women. Most SMEs that use technology as the medium are run by women. So if we empower women, then they have a better chance. Based on our research that we released last week, or my MGI report released last week, we're going to have a better representation of women in the workplace by the use of automation and technology.
I'm going to come to you, Dr. Alexandra. I love, there is actually an online magazine, and it has got even a Twitter account that I love to follow. It says, Africa is not a country. So one of the things I keep saying is, Africa, what's going to happen to Africa? Well, Africa is diverse. You're coming from Mauritius, which has a very different, indicators. When you see people say, oh, Mauritius is also in Africa. Well, it's not. My question is, we talk about generational gap. We talk about education. Can you really talk about Africa in a context that is just general, or are there nuances that you see that may be a good example for the rest of Africa?
So Africa is the world. You just show it, on my slide. So no, Africa, you can't say, I love the regional conference, they're like, region, Africa, it's like, well, what a huge region. So obviously we have different experience in different countries. In Mauritius, we're a very tiny country with only 1.3 million people. You double it with tourists, but we learn.
So that makes 3 million, but two
exactly.
keep living. Okay.
So, but we learned. I think we did nice observations. We looked at the disparity between supply and demand in the education and work, and in a global manner and in a more specific manner. And we already note that job supply was higher than education output in sectors like ICT, civil engineering, life sciences, finance. But bears a negative deviation when talking of languages, human resource, and management. So this is already something you can take as a take-home message. Another thing is that more significantly, the positive deviation, so like the fact that you have the supply higher than the education output, was noticed in manual skills, related jobs such as plumbers, welders, mechanics. So I'm not drawing from Mauritius some generalization on Africa. What I'm drawing from Mauritius is this contrasted picture where you see that indeed technology is changing the landscape and may change it to the pace that each African country wants it to be changed. And this is the choice for every African country, because I always like to say to my children, it's not because the technology device is here that you have a moral responsibility to take advantage of it. Whether you think it is a progress or not, you may use it or you may not. Is the smartphone a progress? So that's the way I would sort of relate, and the fact that so you need to change a little bit the landscape of education, but you see how manual skills are important.
They're still in demand.
And they are still in
I
high
always keep
demand.
saying I still need a good person to fix my shoes.
And the comment on agriculture is just so essential. We need to be fed.
Sure. Mr. Chibebe, you have a very particular question there from Moses, saying, what's happening to the land?
Well, it's a political question, very political question. I think I would require Dr. Moyo to answer that. But let me.
They can do that over cocktail, and I think it will be very, very colorful.
As an international civil servant, I'm not allowed to delve into politics. But it's on a lighter note. I think what is critical is that ILO in 2016, if I remember very well, passed a recommendation on the recommendation on indigenous people, the situation of indigenous people. That's where the issue of land is anchored. And we believe that with that recommendation at national level, if governments take on board the recommendation, the issue of grabbing land from people who own the land will be a thing of the past. But also, it's not about land per se. It's about how to utilize the land productively.
We are completely out of time. I've just been given a timeout, but I'm just going to say, and I'm so sorry, Diane, I really wanted to hear you, but I'm just going to give you all a chance to answer this. God willing, inshallah, when all of us are still going to be alive on this panel 20 years from now, how is your future of work going to be different? Let's start with you, Mr. Chibebe. You don't have the option of saying I won't be around. 20, it's not a lot.
My future will be a future that ensures that people are working in decent work situations, where they enjoy social protection, and where there is gender parity.
Is that a wish or is that reality?
That's what I'm working for.
Okay, good. Harsha.
So coming from technology, I'm not worried at all because we are creating those technologies. So I'm going to have lifelong employment.
You're still going to be doing the same thing that you're doing.
We are doing, but I want to wrap up by giving a couple of perspectives, if you don't mind.
We don't have time.
Okay,
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Dr. Alexandra, 20 years from now, inshallah, where are you going to be? Skip it. Okay. We don't have time now. Namfanelo.
I will make sure that we manage the transition by upskilling our people and reskilling them to make sure that they take the opportunities of the new jobs that will come from automation.
Is that a reality or is that a wish?
Reality.
Reality.
Yeah.
Okay, Diane.
I mean, my reality will be that we'll continue to solve the problems of the continent with technology as a tool, not as an end in itself. And the more people we have with problem-solving skills, because we have issues, I think it shouldn't work. We'll have these issues will be solved by our young people.
Dr. Azano, do you have an answer now?
Well, yes, but
Short.
so my dream is that the future of work is a human future, meaning that it is not a slavery of machines.
Thank you very much. No slavery. Say no to slavery of machine. I want you to all give a round of applause to this panel and to reassure you that 20 years from now, inshallah, we'll all be here looking healthy and probably having a lot of fun in Africa because Africa's the future. Thank you very much.